So welcome to another war game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at Campaigns of 1777, which is a game that was in Strategy and Tactics.
Yep.
Issue
316.
316. This is it's a game, obviously, it's about the American War for Independence, and it was designed by Harold Buchanan.
Mm-hmm.
Strategy and Tactics is published by Decision.
Yep.
Same parent company.
S&T Press, but it's
S&T Press.
part of Decision.
Yeah. So, it's not the American Revolution, although it's the latter part of that, right?
Well, it started in 76, so this is the second year.
It's the latter part of it.
No, it went till 1781.
Okay.
Right, 1781.
Okay.
It ended in 83 with the Treaty of Paris, but that was after Yorktown.
But this is apparently a very pivotal year in the war.
Yeah, so some of the campaigns in this, particularly Saratoga, the Americans won there, right? The Patriots won and brought in the French on their side.
Okay.
So I think that's why 1777 is seen as a very important year. You realize the first couple Patriot victories and things started to go better for them.
Because in this one, there's no French in it. It is just colonials and militia, right? And in the British forces, they got a large Hessian contingent who are very, very good combatants. They've also got Tories, and then they have a few Indians up north as well. So they have a much more kind of a mixed variety of forces.
Yeah.
That's kind of before the French got involved, I guess, then. But it is a point-to-point movement. This is a full-size map. It is covered in tables, charts, modifiers. So there aren't any play-aids in the game, but the actual map is very convenient for
everything.
Some of it's a little bit far away, but it's not the end of the world.
But everything you need to play the game is on this map in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. And the rulebook, how big is the rulebook? Rulebook's it's kind of an insert that you can pull out of a magazine.
It's like 16 pages.
16 pages or
and it's pretty dense text. It's not...
Yeah.
There's a couple pictures to start, but it's a lot of text. But actually, it's a well-written rulebook. I thought it was fairly clear, with the exception of a couple of points. Sea movement, we didn't feel was totally clear.
Yeah, and that could have just been my reading of it.
Right.
But generally speaking, the rulebook was organized well, which is important for me enough. Some of the old...
I've
got some more things from like War Games magazines.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's here's the sequence of play, and then it goes through in order of the sequence of play what all the actions and things do. It's very well organized. If you need to look up a rule, easy to do.
Yeah, I thought it was very, very well done.
But once you know those, the game can go along at a good clip because everything's on the map as well. You're like, oh, what are my modifiers? There they are. Do it. And
as we find with a lot of the games that we play, by the time you've done everything a couple of times, like for instance, evade or...
Yeah, the avoiding battles, the reinforce, all the battle things.
You start to remember the mechanics, and it's fairly easy to use the charts here and just figure out what you need to do.
And this would also make... it's a two-player war game, right? Mm-hmm. But it would make a good solitaire because it is a chip pull-based system.
Yes. I would actually think this would be an excellent solitaire because... You and I, as we played it, and once again, we've only played it the one time.
Yeah.
The Patriots typically are very defensive and don't have a lot of maneuvering options.
Yes.
Right? You're really kind of trying to hold certain points, clog up the lanes, and really just make it difficult for the British to have to work. You want to survive a couple of sieges. I did that. Check. I want to make you take a little more time in the South to take Philadelphia. Check. And so I would think that the Patriots could be done solo very, very easily.
Yes, as long as you played a very smart defensive game, you could be and just play honest with yourself.
Yeah.
That's what's the game. It is ideally suited for that because of the victory conditions, right? Mm-hmm. The victory conditions for this one are the British have to go out and conduct a very aggressive military campaign to basically quell the rebellion.
Yes.
It's effectively what you're trying to do. You have to go and take Philadelphia. Once you have controlled Philadelphia at any point, that unlocks the capacity to be able to win.
And you don't have to control it for, the entirety of the game. You just have to have controlled it at one time.
You just got to go in there and like smash it up a bit and then leave.
Yeah.
And then once you do that, you have to control the 5 victory spaces. And I think it's Montreal, Ticonderoga, Albany, Fort Montgomery, and New York.
Yeah.
So those 5 spaces.
And really, New York, Montreal start in possession of the British.
Yeah, so you have to have this excursion down to Pennsylvania, and then you're trying to meet your New York and Montreal-based forces in the middle. Right, that's really what you're trying to do. That sounds simple. Executing that
10 turns
is fairly challenging.
Yeah.
And partly it's a time basis. You are running against the clock.
Yeah.
You have strong forces.
Very strong
forces, but it's being able to move them effectively and quickly enough and keep them in supply. That's the real challenge in this one.
Yeah.
And I felt like the Patriots, the Americans are just trying to just
survive,
prevent you from doing that. Just trying to slow you down, have enough roadblocks out, and last out enough sieges for it.
Yeah.
To last out the game.
So in essence, the Patriots, you're trying to hold Montgomery, Albany, and then Ticonderoga. You really need to just focus on those, and those are very hard to get. I mean, it's hard for your troops to travel that far quickly. You really only have a 2 movement range. You can do a 3rd with a forced march, but it requires a kind of a roll under your command rating,
and it expends
which isn't hard.
Most of your command points as well.
So, for the Americans, for the Patriots, it's really just hold that Hudson River Valley. Sounds easier than it is. I mean, I felt a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. The problem is, I think the way that it works with sieges usually taking 2, if not most of the time 1 to 3 turns.
Yeah.
Because you can only put 5 units in a fort.
In a big fort.
In a big
small
fort, it's 3. So those, it just takes a couple of turns. So there's not enough turns unless things go really well for you.
Yeah.
You got bogged down in Fort Stanwix. I think it took 3 or 4 rounds.
It took a majority of the game.
And I only had 3 or 4 units in there total. I just some interesting concepts, but as we talked, we feel like for the Patriot side, it's not as engaging. It doesn't feel as much like a game, meaning
it's very defensive.
I don't have a lot of options. I just got to try to recruit and move some guys in. And I did have kind of fun trying to logistically go down here into Massachusetts and bring guys back to bolster the forts. But other than that, it was you were the one doing a majority of the assaults and the real strong moves.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because I don't want to say there was little for you to do, but some of your forces didn't move at all the entire game, right?
They didn't.
And you still won.
Yeah. Putnam was holed up in this huge fort because he didn't need to move anywhere.
Yeah.
He didn't have enough strength to really get out and do a pitched battle.
All he's trying to do is hang on and defend.
Yeah.
Which is, that's what happened.
Yep.
But there are times where I was like, I got these big old forces and I'm storming around. And there were times where I'm like, I'm fighting the terrain and the time more than anything else.
Yes.
And I can get a pretty big challenge for the British to come out on top on this one at times.
Yeah.
Just from a time standpoint.
Well, and we talked. The map is beautiful, by the way. It's done by Terry Leeds, who did the artwork for Liberty or Death.
Oh, same guy. Crushed it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
The mountains actually look totally real. Like this looks like a GIS type satellite picture of the area, but it's not. It's hand drawn, but it's fantastic. But as you look at this, the Allegheny Mountains and the mountains in the area really create a very imposing obstacle. And you were fighting the terrain just as much as you were fighting me.
Yeah, because the rivers is such slow movement, and as the rough terrain is, all those connections take so long.
Yeah.
And the game's 10 turns. If the game was 12 turns, I feel a lot better about it.
Yeah, if it was 12 turns, I think you would have gotten me. I really do.
But then the game would swing the other way. It'd probably be very hard for the Patriots to ever win it.
Yes.
So the game is where it's at for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Through playtesting, but it's very interesting. the British have to go hard.
Yeah, they do.
To grind out a victory in this.
And they have to be fortunate. You know, we also talked at the beginning of the game, we're not sure of the strategy with Howe, because Howe has a ton of great forces here and good leaders, but it's like if he tries to go the land route to Philadelphia down here, it takes a long time. The sea route, it also takes a couple of turns. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another, because you move Howe down here, you can't activate the rest of your guys.
Yeah, because they're out of his command range, so they're just sat there
defending, basically.
Which they should not be doing.
And I wouldn't be doing attacking, because my forces aren't necessarily adept at attacking.
But are typically adept at defending. Or better at defending than attacking, at least.
So we talked about that sea movement. How important is it? We think it's important, but we're not sure strategically or tactically how that's important.
The best way to conduct that, because, I mean, doing multiple sea moves in a game...
It takes forever.
And it takes up a whole huge series of activations of battles that you might or might not be doing elsewhere as well. It's a very, very significant...
So we literally think to do a sea move, it takes 3 turns.
Yeah, I think you embark, and then...
Move at sea.
Move it.
And then disembark.
And disembark.
And then when you're attacking on a disembarkation, your dice are halved.
Yeah, which is brutal.
So that's so where are you going to move that's going to make any difference? So those are some interesting things. The forts are really key for the Patriots. The river slows you down, as you mentioned. You can only move, I think it's 1 river space. You can't move multiple river spaces.
Unless you force march.
Unless you force march, which you can then move to. So it's just a matter of fighting the terrain for the British and the Americans trying to put up a decent enough defense to delay things till the end. The other thing that we noticed, this is a bucket of dice game.
A very large bucket of dice.
How many dice were you rolling with the British typically?
Probably on average about, but it depends if it's sieges or not.
16 to 18?
16 to 18, depending. If I could get a good stack, and then you could get a reinforcing stack with it, which is what I was always trying to do. I mean, I was chucking a ton of dice.
And you only hit on a 6.
Yeah, it's straight hit on a 6, that's it.
There are no modifiers for those rolls.
Nope. The modifiers are for how many dice
adding dice, which I actually liked that. I thought it was kind of different.
I enjoyed that a lot.
You know, you have a good leader, you add his tactical rating, so he might get 2 or 3 dice. And then, if you have an extra leader in there, you might get a bonus die. I thought that was really well done, but it is a bucket of dice game.
And as such, you can't take it too seriously, right?
Yeah.
Bucket of dice games are typically, there's a lot of randomness built into it. There's an optional
loss calculation table,
which is very interestingly constructed as well.
Yeah.
But, it's this beautiful game with these beautiful components, and you just chuck a ton of dice.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little... Usually you don't get such a beautiful production when you're just die smashing.
Yeah, it's true.
It's pretty interesting. But, for some times it felt really good, right?
Yeah.
Like the sieging, we've talked about that.
That felt really great.
My gosh, the sieging felt like good sieging.
Yes.
There are some siege mechanics we've played where I'm like, Like,
this felt good.
Yeah, this was, I add up all my great dice and you just slash it in half. And you add up your few dice and double it.
And some of those dice, like if I had a cannon in a fort, holy mackerel. Defending a cannon, a defending cannon gives you 3 dice. So in a fort, that's 6 dice.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
And in these larger forts, you can get 2 cannons in there.
I had 2 cannons here
in 3 guys in there.
Fort Montgomery. I was going to be rolling like 20 dice there.
Just nuts.
Yeah.
And that's, that kind of stuff is
It felt really good.
And just, some siege mechanics, you're just like, oh gosh, I'm just like not about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like roll a dice, do you get a siege point or not?
Yeah.
Give me a dice, give me a chuck 'em.
Yeah, just roll them.
Makes sense. I liked that a lot.
The other thing about the siege that I liked, because of the system, you may be rolling 20 dice, but you only hit on 6s. One time you rolled, I think it was 7 hits.
Yeah.
That was awesome, by the way. The most I ever rolled was 3. The dice were not on my side today.
Well, and typically, I feel like the Patriots just roll fewer dice.
They do.
Forces are not as strong.
So you roll 10 dice, you should only get 2 or 3 6s. you were rolling 20 and got 3 or 4 most of the time.
Yeah.
But that felt really good. I kind of liked that, and I liked the fact that I lost 2 units. I still have 2 units in there defending.
Yeah.
So guess what? The siege stretched out 1 more round.
Which is just a big old tick for you.
Which was like a victory. I a couple times I was like, yep, victory at Fort Stanwix, even though I got crushed. But it was a victory because it took you 2 turns.
Yep.
So that felt good. There's even a mechanic that we never did because I don't know why I would ever do it.
Yeah.
Doing a sortie out of a fort and attacking the army that's sieging you. We were talking about under what circumstances would that be done.
Or, yeah, I think you might be able to, like, escape as well. I'm not sure.
Right. So that was an interesting mechanic, but I appreciated that it was in there.
But for game purposes, all you're trying to do is defend.
Yeah.
So just...
Why would I want to run out and lose my double dice?
Yeah. I'm going to make you attack
I'm gonna roll
me
3
because it's going
dice.
to take you even longer.
Yeah. So I thought that was very well done. I think Harold did some good things with that. I also really liked the rally mechanic. And not typically, when we think of rally, it's like a broken morale
Right,
rally.
I'm trying to, like, get back into a fight.
In this one, it's trying to recruit.
It's rabble-rousing.
Yeah, it's rabble-rousing. But you're trying to recruit Tories and Indians.
Which for me was just punishing. It was a roll of 1.
Very hard for you. And there are no modifiers on that either.
Once the entire game. I got
Was it only
one
once?
Indian out 1 time.
And how many times did I roll? Because like, for instance,
Yours
in
are
this
2s or 3s, right?
Eastern department, it was a 3. I think I recruited 5 or 6 guys there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked that. I thought that was kind of cool. It made me think about where I wanted my leaders when I tried to bring in troops. I thought that was very well done. I also really liked the supply system was kind of interesting.
Yes, it was simple enough to not be overwhelming.
Right.
There was the supply counters as supply trains you can bring with you, or you can place them out permanently
As a depot.
And at first I was like, why would you ever do that? Because you'd want to carry the supply with you. But it's the supply train. When you place it, you just place it with your leader. But if you want to place it as a depot, you can place it 2 spaces away.
Yeah.
So it's a way to
Spreads
kind of reach out to some other guys that might
Yeah.
need some supply. Instead of you having to move over there and do it, you can just be like, throw the supply depot. But that's another aspect of this game which I enjoyed. Because you have to keep your guys in supply, otherwise you're half dice, basically.
Yeah.
Which is killer. So
there were a couple times down here I had von Kniphausen out of supply, and I kept, am I going to attack him? Because then he only had 10 dice.
only.
But in the end, I only ended up with 12 dice, so I decided not to. But that would have been my opportunity to strike. Once I cut your supply, and before you could get back in. So I liked that dance. I felt like, and the other thing is the magazines. There are magazines printed on the board. Some are Patriot friendly. Some are British friendly and can never be used by the other side. I thought that was well done. That was an interesting element that I had to look for and then try to figure out, how the heck am I going to get into supply?
Yeah, you got your magazines and you're making, a chain of these supply trains from those to get your extended range forces.
Yeah.
It's a neat thing to have to concern yourself about without being overwrought or deeply complex and crunchy.
Well, and it was another thing to think about, but it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't difficult.
No.
It was not complex. The other thing that I really enjoyed was the ability to attack that supply train.
Yes.
So the Patriots, not the British, right? The Patriots have an ability.
I think I can do it too.
Yeah, but it wasn't as effective. Remember, we decided it wasn't as... But anyway, you can go out and attack that supply train, which I did it down here, and you're like, oh, crap, I can't move now because I'll be out of supply. So it forced you to spend a turn...
Yeah, getting them back into
buying
supply,
another
doing some
guy.
stuff.
That was interesting. The Indian raid element was very interesting. The supply raid was pretty interesting.
Yeah, those things they're very much like, here's like an extra little thing you can do on your turn.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of your activation points.
It does.
But what else are you using them on?
Yeah.
Half the time. But, some of them are pretty harsh dice rolls. The Indian raids, you have to roll a 1 to do anything.
A 2 did something, but it wasn't good.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
You rolled a 1 was fine. Any other odd number, your Indian would die.
Yeah. which is fine, right? You had a lot of those Indian allies that they don't
not
participate in.
Not after Brant left,
and
which was the
all
first
went
freaking
home.
event. Just yeah.
So I thought there were some good elements with the command and control and the supply aspects. The leaders felt very much like a lot of the other point-to-point games we've played, like Here I Stand.
Yeah.
They kind of had some of the same abilities. How many units could they control? How much could their reach? And then they had a defensive and an offensive value.
Which I appreciated that.
Yeah.
I like that difference just because it gives a bit more nuance to which leader where and
Yep.
you know, how good and what kind of good they are in battle. I like that. That was neat.
But like Hal was really
those.
good at attacking, but defending he was only a 2, which meant he's only going to add 2 dice to the attack rather than 4, or to the defense. Just a lot of very interesting elements, I thought, that made for an interesting game. I think more interesting for the British.
I would agree with that statement.
And more interactive for the British, but really an exercise in just trying to plug holes and survive.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll show you the map because it's gorgeous, and we'll show you some of the pieces and a little bit how it works. And then what we'll do, we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. Okay. So here's a look at the map, and it's full size, 22 by 34. It's absolutely gorgeous artwork. Love it, love it, love it. There's a whole bunch of boxes and charts and tables on the map, which are functionally very, very helpful. It kind of looks like a bit of a mess on the side, see where we've got our holding boxes, but at the bottom and just kind of off camera, these are our random events tables. We'll kind of talk about those here in a little bit, because it's not just regular rolling a table, here's the random events. It has some of that, but then half the results, if you roll a 2 through 6 for the British, you get this event goes off. If you roll a 2 through 6 again the next round, this event goes off. And then this one the next turn. So, and these are the kind of the really historical things. At the bottom below that off camera, just the random like, oh, you can't do this, or you can't do that, or you can do this, or you get a free guy. These are the real historical things that kind of change the game and give you the good flavor. So it was interesting to see just a different random events table, frankly. There's a very small sequence of play here, and then there's a battle sequence just underneath that you can't see. The big parts here, we have, these are holding boxes for the Patriot player and for the British. And what you can't, it's sideways, I know, because you sit here and here, but you have each of your leaders has kind of an empty column, and you fill it with what's in their stack, so you don't have colossal stacks all over the board. Sometimes you do, because you just leave them on there, but it's kind of up to you. You have the option to keep some things off board to keep the clutter down, which I enjoy for point to point. A bunch of modifiers for interceptions, reinforcements, avoiding battle. This is all your regular battle modifiers up here. These are storming, fortresses, kind of breaking sieges modifiers. There's kind of a map legend at the top, which is just off camera, you can't see that. And then up here there's literally your activation points, what you can do with them. Again, just up here in the top right. Other than that, you have 13 colonies, and it's point to point, right? Each of these is a countryside, the squares, the circles like New York are the towns and cities. There's triangles, which are forts like Fort Anne, Fort Edward, Fort Hunter. And then there are star forts, so Fort Montgomery, which this is a victory condition for the British, and then Ticonderoga's up here as well, and then we got Oswego up there. So those are big fortresses. You can defend very well in those. These you can hold 5 guys in. The triangles only hold 3, so they're just smaller forts. But basically, the victory conditions are the British have to go and, at some point in the game, go and control Philadelphia. So you have to march someone down there, or sail them by boat to Wilmington and then march up the road. So you have to go and take Philadelphia. That flips this counter from they've never controlled it to they have at some point controlled it. That unlocks the capacity to win. And the victory conditions are then you have to control New York, which is right there, Fort Montgomery, which is right there, Albany, Ticonderoga, which is underneath Burgoyne, and then Montreal. There's 5 victory spaces. and the British start with everyone in New York and everyone in Montreal, basically. So you have to send some guys down there and then meet them in the middle. You'll have a task force from Fort Oswego kind of cutting in this way to put pressure on for them to empty their forces this way. And then if you're feeling adventurous, you can sea travel over here, some leaders to kind of pick up a bunch of guys from Newport and maybe do some skirmishes to try and distract them as well. But the major focuses are, there's going to be huge battles around Fort Montgomery. This is going to be absolute bloodbath. If Greene and Washington kind of run down here, you can rally a lot of forces and have some strong field battles down in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. But then it's the forces coming out of Canada trying to pour down. This gets very bogged down and slow because of these rough connections, these dotted lines, the river connections. It's very slow moving across those. And you have to siege every one of these forts that has guys in it, which it takes time to do. You move in, they're going to siege, you can storm the castle, or storm the forts, but your dice are halved. So you might have like 10 dice with your guys, but you're only going to roll 5 of them. And they might only have 5 dice with their guys, they're going to double them. So sieging is very, very brutal. You have to have a lot of guys to make it worth it. But having a lot of guys takes a lot of time. So there's a lot of nuance here to how you conduct things. But it's only a 10-turn game, and you have to rush. You have to go do it as quick as possible. This is very much at the end. I think we played through 8 turns, and then I conceded because there was no way I was going to take both of these in the 2 turns left after we finished turn 8. It's unfeasible. Defensively, that's what the Patriots are going to do. Washington has this little 4 value on the right. That's his defensive value. If he's sat in a fort, that's going to be doubled. That's 8 dice he alone is going to roll, let alone he's going to get an extra dice from Putnam. He's going to get a bunch from Putnam's forces defending in the fortress. I mean, just nuts. So the Patriots are playing a very defensive game. And I know it seems, this is American Revolution. They should be going out fighting the British. Well, at 1777, this was King George trying to lay down the hammer. He was trying to crush the rebellion. So this is a very aggressive game for the British, very defensive game for the Patriots. So what does that look like? So it's a chit pull game. So we have all these chits in this cup. And the chits are going to activate your primary leaders, or they're going to do like supply checks or random events. So you pull a chit, and we have a supply check. So the British then will check everyone for supply to see if they're in supply or not. And basically supply is checked, and we'll kind of move him back here. It's checked through supply trains, and you're trying to get back to these magazines. So this New York has this little red and blue symbol. That means it can provide supply to both players depending on who controls it. So you can go 2 spaces back to a magazine. So if I have guys here, they're 1, 2, they're good, no big deal. If I have guys further away, what I'm needing to do is I need to have dropped off a supply depot here. Okay, if I've got a supply depot, I can be all over here, 1, 2 to a supply depot, 1, 2 back to a magazine. These guys, no problem. I'm going to need another one if I'm going to go down to Philadelphia, because now I'm too far away from this supply depot. Or, once I take Philadelphia, so Philadelphia is a magazine, no big deal, I can get supply from being in Philadelphia. But you can't just run up the board, you have to make sure that you keep yourself in supply, otherwise all your dice are halved in combats. You don't want to get into that. It's a big old mess. But you check that. Anyone who's out of supply gets out of supply. If you were previously out of supply and you have now been put into supply, you would obviously remove your no supply marker, all that kind of stuff. Then what you do is you just pull another chip. So we pulled Howe. So Howe's going to activate. Howe's got this 9 at the top left. So he can either spend a bunch of points on some leadership actions, or he could go and move and do combats, or he could say, I'm not going to do anything at the moment because I am going to activate one of my subordinates. And in this instance, he's just going to go. We'll go and do a fight just for funsies. No, we're not. So in this instance, what we're going to do... Oh gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? This is rough. So he could move himself, because you can move 2 spaces, but I don't think we're ready to assault that yet. He's got 9 points to spend. He's going to spend 7 of those 9 points. So let's put him on the 9 points. He's going to spend 7 points down to 2. And he can activate a subordinate that's within range 4. 1, 2, he's within range 4. So you activate 7 points worth. He's going to move 1. He's going to kind of join them up here as well. So they're going to move together. Combined, they have these 2 huge stacks. It's going to be great for when we take on Fort Montgomery. That's his turn done, because the change he's got left of 2 activations, can't really do anything with that. Then we activate Green. Well, Green's down here with all these guys in Philadelphia. Let's see. He doesn't really want to go out and attack Cornwallis, because Cornwallis has got a pretty nice stack. So let's say he's going to attempt to rally. He's in this middle department, and he's going to roll on the rally table. Just roll a d6, and a d6 was a 1. So I'm trying to roll for Patriot Militia a 2 or less. We did that, so we get the dice value. We get 1 Patriot Militia. So 1 little militia moves into green stack. Great. If I'd rolled a 2, it would be 2 or less. We'd actually get 2 Patriot Militia. That's important because over here in the Eastern Department, it's a 50-50. If I roll a 3 on a dice, I'm going to get 3 guys, which is very, very nice. But some of the up here, it's very harsh, or over in the Highlands, it's very harsh. You have to roll a 1 to get any kind of guy in the Highlands in this section here. There's just not many people living there. Combat is a bucket of dice affair. So let's just do a combat real quick. Let's just take this stack of dudes. Well, let's take these guys. And let's take... Does Washington have anyone? Washington Putnam. Screw it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have these 2, and let's say they're fighting in Hartford. We're not going to worry about doing sieges quite yet. So Hal has these forces with him. They're in his little holding box. Hal has 10 regulars and an artillery piece with him. That's a lot of firepower. Okay. Van Knuphausen has 5 Hessians and 1 artillery piece. Hal also has a supply train, just for the sake of it. Okay. Washington doesn't have anyone with him. However, Putnam does. Putnam's got a big, nice defensive force. He's got 2 cannons. He's got 3 militia. Oh, 3 colonials, I apologize. And he's got 3 militia. That's a decent-sized force for the Patriots, but it's not great. And where we get into the bucket of dice is we're going to do our kind of battle dice values. So you get 1 dice for every regular and for every Hessian. So we've got, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 dice already, just from the regulars. The offensive cannons are worth 2 per. So we had 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So we've got 19 dice just from the units. Then we're going to add Hal's attack value, which is a 4. So we're currently at 23. And we're going to add 1 more for having an extra leader, 24. And then we're going to add 1 for having any amount of British regulars, 25. And we're going to have 1 because we've got a British commander commanding British regulars, 26. And the same thing, 1 for Hessians, 27. And 1 for a Hessian leader with Hessians, 28. So he's going to roll 28 dice. That's the kind of game this is. Now 28 dice, you need a 6 to hit. So the reality is on average, we're going to get 5 hits out of that. Most, that's what you would expect. Washington has a 4 defensive value. So he's got 4 dice, 5 for an extra leader. Each of these 2 SPs are worth 3 apiece because they're defensive. So we've got 4, 5, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then it's 1 for every 2. So 15. So 15 dice. And that's the way you get to 28 to 15. I'm expecting to see 2 hits off of this and 5 hits off of this. Okay? But you have to roll the dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Absolutely insane. This is a heck of a field battle. Okay? So, 28 dice. And look, 1, 2, 3, 4 hits. Right? That's 1 less than we were expecting. But that's 24. No, that's average. That's what you would expect. You might get 1 more hit than that. So I'm going to do 4 hits to them. And then they were going to roll 14 dice, I think it was. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 dice. And they rolled 1, 2, 3 hits. So ever so slightly above average. I do 4 hits to them. They do 3 hits to me. So as much dice as you're chucking, hitting is fairly challenging. I'm going to win the battle as the British because I inflicted more losses. So they're going to take 4 losses, and you have to take them evenly amongst all the different types of SPs that you have, which is very punishing. So we're going to take 1 from militia. We're going to take 1 from our colonials. We're going to take 1 from our cannons. And it's the cannons that absolutely kill you. That's absolutely brutal. Then we're going to take 1 more from our militia, and we're going to take 1 more from our colonials. Because you can't afford to lose your cannons. They're just absolutely, they're very vital. And the British are going to lose 3, which again, they're going to have to lose 1 British regular, so we'll make some change there. They have to lose 1 Hessian, and then they have to lose 1 artillery piece, which is just, losing artillery does not feel good. But that's why you're trying to rally these Tories, frankly, to use as body bags. And if you're up north, you've got the Indians, which also serve that purpose as well. They're not effective in combat because they only get dice 2 to 1, but they're good for absorbing losses, which is tragic to think about in real life, but for a game, that's what you want for serving the purposes of how the attrition in combat works. Because I inflicted more losses, the US player has to retreat, and they basically have to retreat, anywhere where I'm not or didn't come from, so they're going to move up to Springfield, for example, and then I'm going to sit here in the space that I just took from them. But that's combat, right? It's chucking a bunch of dice, doing a bunch of hits, hoping for the best at times. And this is why we have those holding boxes, because otherwise these stacks can get pretty unwieldy. These are very, very nice, functionally speaking. Now, the difference with the forts, when you're sieging the forts, a fort can only ever have 5 people inside of it. So let's kind of change that up, right? If we had 2 cannons, and we had 3 colonials, plus we had Washington, and let's say Putnam was in there as well. What happens is we count all this up. So defensively, each one of these is 3. So this would be 6 dice. Plus 3 is 9. Plus 4 from Washington's defensive value is 13. Plus 1 is 14. Okay? So I got 14 dice, but because I'm being stormed doubles dice. So suddenly I'm the one with 28 dice. And how? He's launching up here and he's got, let's say he's got his 10 regulars with him, and he's got his 2 points worth of cannons, plus 4. So I've got 16, plus 1 for being British, plus 1 for having a British leader. Let's say I've got 16 dice. I half those if I'm storming a fortress. So suddenly, Howe running up without support from his Hessians, he's chucking 8 bones, and suddenly Washington's chucking 28 bones. So how you stick yourself in these victory points and just kind of sit there and it's like, I will let you break yourself upon me, is very, very important and key to this game. Now, the problem is there's a limit of 5 units in there. Once they're dead, boy, it's hard to kind of fill that back up. So you will attrit losses over time, but if you can sit there defending, the time's going to run out. British, it's not going to go well for them. But that's a lot of what this game is. It's running around trying to break these victory point spaces and trying to meet in the middle from Montreal and New York, and that way the British have a chance of winning. The Patriots, all they're trying to do is stop that from happening. Stick a bunch of guys in here, stick a bunch of guys in Ticonderoga, make sure everyone's in supply. If you can defend Philadelphia, do it for as long as possible. But other than that, it's a preventative game, which has its flaws, but this is a short game. Only takes a couple hours at most. And by that I mean it takes 2 hours at most. Once you've played a few rounds, it goes along very quickly at a good clip. These modifiers, you learn them very quickly. They are asymmetrical because one side's got Indians and Tories, and the other one's got militia, and who's defending, and who's got the leaders, things like that. But it's a chip pull game, pull chits, and you just keep going. Once the chits are done, move on to the next turn. Very, very simple game from that standpoint. So what we'll do, we'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. Great production, especially for a magazine game, considering what it is, right?
Yeah, it's really, really well done.
This is one of those people ask a lot. They're like, "Oh, which wargame magazines should I subscribe to?"
S&T's pretty dang good.
Well, so often the replies are, "I don't subscribe," but just like you buy the ones that have the good games in it, right?
The ones you're interested in.
This is one of those. A lot of people went out and bought this issue because it has this game by a good designer and it is top-notch production.
Yeah, agreed.
And so people, if you're gonna ask, which war games should I read? Look for ones that have good games that you're interested in first off, right?
Yeah.
This is a very popular game. People like this.
Mm-hmm.
Harold was playing it and showing it off and teaching it a lot during the insurgency in Indianapolis.
Yep.
So we saw a lot of people playing this, finally get it to the table. I actually really enjoy Point to Point.
I do too.
The more I play it, I think the more I like it, if it's well designed, right?
Well, the point that there's 2 or 3 concepts that are important for Point to Point. That interception and escape element.
Yeah.
It feels like it takes you forever to move around, and that's typically the way Point to Point is to me.
They can't. Some games do that. I feel like Washington's Wall was like,
I can move halfway down the
Whether or not that's actually true, but that's how I felt.
Right.
This one was a bit very much like, what? 2 spaces, that.
Yep. And then Point to Point. The other thing I really enjoy about Point to Point is I can see where you can get me from. Yeah. And I know that sounds stupid because in a normal, like an area movement game, you've still got the same thing. You've got one territory and you can see the 2 or 3 territories from which they can get you.
But it's very easy to formulate a strategy in this from the standpoint of like,
I got to defend this
come up this road.
Yep.
I gotta sit here.
Yeah. Or for instance, this difficult terrain up there. I knew you weren't going to go down in there, so I had to defend the west side of the Hudson River. So I enjoy Point to Point. I don't know that I would have said that 4 or 5 years ago.
So with Point to Point, like you said, some of the things that are really key are things like interception, like, I move here, and like you kind of... Some games have really insane, overwrought, complex rules about how and when you can do that, and all these exceptions. But it is so clean in this. It
is very clean.
Like, you roll under the number of your leader, and here's the 2 modifiers. It's really simple. And having it all printed on the map... It's a very clean game.
Yeah.
I'm not sat there like, how do I do this stuff that's really important?
Well, we had to dive into the rule book to get more detail, but really it's all here. Once you understand that, it's a matter of, let's look here, and let's down, very, very interesting. But Point to Point, I thought it was pretty cool. The other thing we didn't really talk about, these random events were fairly interesting.
Yeah.
You have a chit. This is chit pull activation. We didn't really talk about that.
We did that earlier on.
Did we?
Bit, yeah.
So each side had a random event roll. You basically roll 2d6 and consult this table. Some of these are really bad. Some of them are amazing.
Yeah.
If you have a leader that's been activated, you can reactivate him again. But you didn't have that, so that was a waste of that. But very interesting. I thought
what's cool about this table, as opposed to other tables, is. You roll 2d6 and you consult, this is what happens.
Yeah.
But you also have this column it merges results 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for the British into one column, and each time you roll within that set of numbers, you have a progressive set of events that trigger.
Yeah.
And that's the history, that's the timeline triggering. So the first one, it's Brant with all of his Indians. They
move.
Basically just bugger off.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh great.
Yeah.
This huge force I had, they're dissipating.
Yeah.
And then Carleton won't garrison Ticonderoga, and then Jane McCrae's murdered by Indians. So, 50-50, this timeline's going to trigger on your random events. And that's really neat to have some flavor in there that changes
some historical flavor.
Instead of it just being like, oh, you can't move by sea, or this other thing happens. I liked the history, the little flavor from that was cool.
Yeah.
I've never seen a table have that progression within a set before.
I thought that was pretty interesting. So what didn't you like about the game?
I felt like, and you can speak more to this, the Patriots were just very defensive.
Yeah.
And it was still fairly easy for them to win. And that's usually a combination that provides a boring experience.
Could potentially boring, absolutely.
If I'm not doing anything and then I happen to win, that's not great for one player. Now, as I played the British, I had a really good time with this game.
Sure, yeah.
Because I had to be very, very aggressive. And, I had big stacks. I got to chuck a bunch of dice. And I got to move across the board and wipe some stacks. That's fun to do. Yeah. I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
So that was great for me, but I could see some people being maybe turned off by playing the other side of that.
I think you need to go into it understanding that that's what the Patriots are going to do.
Yeah.
We haven't played this 5 times. I don't know that I ever did an attack on you.
I don't think so either. No, you did.
Everything was defensive, because it just makes much more sense to be defensive the way the game is set up, particularly with my leaders being better at defensive.
And anytime you have victory conditions that are, the British have to do this, every other outcome is a Patriot win.
You just want to make that harder.
Yeah. All you're doing is, I'm just trying to prevent that, so I'm just going to gum everything up.
Yep. So I will say this. From that defensive perspective, I did have a good time kind of running around figuring out where those choke points are, where I can take advantage of the forts and the terrain to try to make it as difficult for you as possible. I did find that interesting.
So, and then it's just, how many times did we pull your leader and you're like, I do nothing but rally, right?
Yeah, and that didn't feel good. I'm going to be honest, because in a game, I want to do something.
Yes.
I don't want to just
you're a very proactive player.
Yeah.
But that's why this would be a good solo game.
Agreed.
Because you could be like, all right, it's on the British to do anything in this game.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you're going to do it solo, you'd want to play the British as the force you're controlling.
You'd have to.
And then the other guy's just the dummy moving around. But I don't know. I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. I don't know, and it's another game that we played on the American Revolutionary War, which
the one thing I will say about this is, of the American Revolutionary War games that we've played, this is the one where I felt like I had the most focus. I swear, when we play Liberty or Death, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Absolutely none. I'm just like,
move this around here, do this. And,
I guess this has very explicit victory conditions for the British. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. And I'm like, I absolutely know how I should at least attempt to go about doing it.
Yeah.
And so...
But I would argue, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I would argue that Liberty or Death has very explicit victory conditions. You know where your numbers have to be.
I'm just not very good at it.
Well, and it's hard because you have so many options.
But this
is that kind of what you're talking about?
It's more like... I don't know. I just... Whenever I play that game, I'm like...
What do we do?
What am I doing?
Yeah. But I always have fun playing it. I don't care what... Yeah.
I love it. But, I will handily lose that game every time. So I'm just like... But with this...
I'm
very
more
focused. I'm like,
I
have to go and take Philadelphia, and I have to go take these 3 other
I would agree
places.
with that.
That's it. So I knew... I'm like, I got to get there. I got to take forces.
Do this.
Here's how to do it. And I felt like that in Washington's War. I was just kind of like futzing around.
Yeah.
And then the last turn, I'm like... Oh, just put a bunch of influence out.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't feel a particularly strong historical focus. This, I'm like,
you feel focused.
I know what the campaign is and what I'm trying to do. And this is one of the first AmRev games where I'm like, oh,
this is what I gotta do.
I'm actually trying to do, which they failed to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I was like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Because they never did it, so I'm like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
But I get what I'm actually trying to do. So this was a very good learning experience for me to translate into other AmRev games as well. So I actually appreciate having played this for that reason.
Well, and I'm going to be honest, I think the system that works together for this point-to-point, I would love to see Harold or someone else do some... Let's do some more games in this system, open it up a little bit, give the Patriots some forces, and let's have some fun with that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if they could do follow-ups for later years of the Revolution. That would be interesting.
Interesting thing to look at.
If there's enough out there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not a game designer, so I don't know that I would know how to answer that. But overall, an interesting experience, more interesting for the British than the Patriot. Extremely beautiful map. I mean, this
is the nicest magazine game I've ever seen.
I've never seen a magazine game look like. Even have the detail that it has in the charts and the tables. Very well done. So, out of the park home run on those elements. And really, the system, very tight. Understandable, tight, manageable, not overly complex or deep, but adds some thematic coolness to it. I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, if you'd have put this in a small box or in a folio, would have been a great game on its own.
Yeah.
You also get a dope magazine with it as well, which has a ton of history and other war game stuff in it.
Yep.
So to get this in the magazine, really, really good value as well.
Absolutely.
That's the one thing that's nice about that too.
Yeah.
Because this map, you would find this map in like a $60 or $70 box game.
Oh, no doubt. I have played $60 or $70 games.
Yeah,
but the maps don't look anything like this. Let's be honest here. So I won't mention any names, but yeah.
But yeah, this is Campaigns of 1777. It's available in S&T issue 316.
316 from May and June of 2019.
Yes, really fun game. I actually got a lot out of this, and I had a great time being offensive and needing a lot of aggression, which typically I'm not the most aggressive player.
No,
unless I'm playing the Germans trying to like take over Europe. That's fine.
Well, it was interesting. you mentioned the offensive part. That first round or two, you were still being a little more timid.
I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
But then I think by turn 3, you turned it on and you were being offensive. Offensive in general to me, but offensive in the game
aggressive
as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very enjoyable experience for the British player. I had a good time with this one.
Me too.
So, S&T 316, Campaigns of 77 from Harold Buchanan. Check it out. It's available on their website. If you're a subscriber, you already have it. It's a fun game to play. Some good history and a ton more in the magazine as well. So, appreciate you guys tuning in. And I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.